Hi, welcome to Golden Years. I'm Lori Betts. This month, my special guest is Patty Kolman, and she is from A Place for Mom. So come on back, and she's going to give you some good pointers.
There is nothing wrong with your television. We are controlling transmission. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to Brunswick Area Television.
Hi, welcome back to Golden Years. I'm Lori Betts. This month, my special guest is Patty Kolman, and she is representing A Place for Mom. And it is a needed company to help you through your situations. Patty, thank you for being on my show this month.
Oh, thank you for having me.
A Place for Mom. Now, a lot of people are probably out there thinking, what does that mean? So tell me at first just a little bit, what is A Place for Mom?
Okay, well, probably one of the biggest questions, you can almost guess my two big questions are. The first one is, where are you located? Are you a building? They think we're a facility. But A Place for Mom actually is a referral company and a service company that works with many buildings. We are experts in senior housing. So we partner with different companies across the country and in Canada, and then especially here locally. And so we help seniors find the appropriate housing.
And that being said, at GTB, I am forever being asked. I mean, children are coming in stressed out. Okay,
Right.
Mom had her hospital stay and then
Right.
her nursing home stay, and then the family has the meeting, and they
Yeah.
realize that mom cannot live alone anymore.
Right.
Mom or dad, because
Right.
we're going to talk both sexes.
Yes.
And for them, they are very, very overwhelmed. You know, so they come in and they want my opinion. You know, who do you
Right.
suggest?
Right.
And you know as well as I know, you could suggest the top-rated facility, and it always isn't a good fit.
Correct. Right.
So when they're calling A Place for Mom, you connect with all these other facilities
Correct.
in the surrounding areas.
Yes.
And so what does the person ask you? Like, what is the key questions? Like, how do I go about picking a home for
Right,
mom or dad?
Right. Well, the first thing they do is they love to tell their story, because everyone has their own story, and we like to listen. You have to remember, this is our expertise, and this is all we do. So we want to hear their story. And, you know, we can sugarcoat this whole process, but the first thing I really want to talk about is how painful this situation can really be. And I've lived it. So I think that's why we're all end up in the line of work that we do, because of your life experiences. So I've been on the receiving end of this situation, and it's usually the adult children, it's not fun to realize that the people who have nurtured you and cared for you and been your role models and your guardians your whole life now need help.
Very stressful.
Very stressful. So it's a very emotional time for the adult children, and for the senior, it's painful because they're losing their independence. That was a big lesson for me with my own mother 15 years ago. All we wanted to do was move her bedroom downstairs, and she wouldn't hear of it. And I thought, but it was that small loss of independence. So can you imagine having to leave your home if you really didn't want to? It's stressful for both the senior and for the children. So the first thing we do is act as mini counselors, hear their story, and try to work with their fears and make them more comfortable. Because it is a process, it's an emotional journey. So we kind of assess the family on that level. You know, and some people are going to come to the table very comfortable, very matter of fact. This is the next phase of life and we're ready to move on. Other families are going to need more hand-holding, more comforting, more advice. And so we really work with families on a different level, you know, depending on their situation. But the first question, it usually isn't a question, it's a story, and they think they know what they need, and sometimes they're right. But after hearing their stories, sometimes we have better suggestions to alter what they thought they needed. So that's where we begin. What do you really need? What is the real situation?
So you just sit down with them and then you just ask them the questions.
Correct.
And I know in the assisted livings, there are levels.
Yes.
So, and they're different from independent places.
Correct.
Because there's a lot of them too.
Right.
But independent places is you have your apartment.
Right.
You're in a building, but yet you do have your own meals. You
Yes.
cook yourself still. They might have like community breakfast.
Right.
Then otherwise you live in your own little room and you come and go whenever you choose to. But
Correct.
then they have the different levels at the assisted livings.
Right.
So you need to
Right.
pinpoint with them what they're after.
Correct. As senior housing experts, excuse me, A Place for Mom works with senior independent living facilities. We work with assisted livings. We work with Alzheimer and dementia care units. We work with group homes, which are becoming more popular.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't
it's kind
know
of a new
that.
model of care. It's not a new model of care, but it's a model of care that's becoming more popular. We can talk about that in a few minutes. We can also recommend non-medical home health care to people that maybe, you know, we sometimes work with families for years. When they first come to us and they think mom and dad need to move, and after we talk to them, it's like, you know, actually your mom or dad might be just fine with a little home care. So we have agencies that we can, again, recommend. They're free to go with who they choose, but we can give them some guidance on that. But you're correct, every facility is so different. And what we do is really try to match up the person or the individual, the family, with the facility. I mean, you can get in your car and drive from place to place to place and walk in and out and see such a vast difference in, like you said, the level of medical care. Some take very high functioning seniors and some take the very sick. Well, you certainly, if your parent is very active and just needs a little bit of help, you know, you really don't want to waste your day going to the places where the people have a higher level of medical care. So we kind of match you up to what you need socially and medically and geographically. As far as senior independent living, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of mom or dad, the house is just too much for them. Or maybe they can't do stairs anymore. You know, maybe they are having trouble with their back or their knees. Maybe they're having diabetic problems and they just can't do stairs. They might do fine in a senior independent living, which, like you said, there's no nurse available, there's no actual medical care, but they can get around easier. So those are all the questions that we ask the family. And you might have someone that's very independent, but you feel that, you know, in another year, we see the parent declining a little bit. They might just need some help. Now that family, we might recommend right away going to an assisted living that takes, you know, the very active senior, because then they don't have to move in a year and a half. So we kind of take it into consideration not only today, but where mom and dad might be a year from now. I mean, we aren't psychics. We can't really know how they're going to be in a year and a half or 2 years, but we can sometimes gauge within a year how are they going to be doing at this facility in a year.
And that being said, my mother-in-law went from independent living after a week and a half. She fell, broke the hip, ended up in the nursing home.
Right.
But then when we put her in assisted living, she was at the highest level for like a good 3 months.
Okay.
And then we said, you know what? She is recovering, so let's cut back. And they agreed to do that. So that's a very good point to have
Right.
the different levels.
Yes.
Because you're going to have changes.
Right.
You know, just because you're going into the assisted living doesn't mean you're going to stay in perfect health
Right.
and out of trouble.
That's correct.
Because life is changes.
You know, and some companies have everything on one campus. They have the independent living, the assisted living, and the skilled care. So if you choose, you can go somewhere like that and just stay within the same health campus and the same property and just go from place to place as the medical care changes. And then again, many are just separate. They only specialize in one type of care. So it really, we do set the family up on the tours, and they go visit, and they're going to get a feeling of what's right for them, and that's really important.
And I also tell a lot of people too that the families or the kids that ask, make sure you choose a place that's good for you, the radius. Because
Right.
if you're going to be the visitors, you know, you
Right.
can't stress yourself out.
Right.
you know, making that decision. You know,
Right.
mom's going to be an hour away, 45 minutes a day. You know, after a day's work,
Right.
you know, you have your life. And then
Correct.
you're running out to see mom and dad.
Right.
So you have to make it convenient for yourselves too.
You do.
So
You
you have
do.
to put that in the equation.
You walk a fine line because oftentimes when someone does leave their own home, of course they have their community of their family and friends. Sometimes it's from their church, sometimes it's from their neighborhood. If you move too far away and you lose that connection, it can be very, very painful. So sometimes it's a happy medium between the children and the parents' community of friends. Sometimes, as we know, kids today, we're kind of global now and they're moving out of town. A place for mom can help facilitate if a parent and a child agree maybe it's time for mom or dad to move closer to the children and they live in Alabama or Georgia or Washington. We can help facilitate that because we do have partnerships all across the country. So that's another area where we can really be of assistance.
Okay, so when you see Joan in London, she's got the 800 number.
Correct.
So it gets routed to the zip code, or?
It does. You know, A Place for Mom has been around since 2000, 15 years. We are the oldest company that does this type of work. And initially we were just an internet-based business, but there's such a demand and such a need. We have grown so much. So they've now put local representatives like myself in each, not every city, but in every state and certain cities within the state. And we've devised a local number just to help filter traffic from the 800 number on the website. You can call that number and they will eventually filter you to the local number, but if you want quicker response time, we do have a local number that you can call, which is awesome. It's great.
And I always tell people, my viewers, no question is too stupid to ask.
No.
Because you want to use you for
Correct.
all the information
Yes.
that you could feed them with.
The best story I can tell was my own experience. We were looking for a facility for my mother, again, 15 years ago. And I walked in, and I've been in healthcare for over 30 years, and had my brother with me, and I walked in and sat down, and they said, okay, what would you like to know? And I immediately burst into tears.
Oh, yeah.
I was so embarrassed and humiliated, and I had no idea where it came from. And the person that was talking to me said, don't be embarrassed. She goes, this happens all the time. Yeah. So, you know, there's no reaction, there's no emotion, and there's no question that's dumb. Again, we all go back to, this is a huge change. Watching your loved one's age and need a little help is a huge change, like
And
it or
it's
not.
life.
It is life. So that's our job. You know, we're there to comfort you and to let you know you're not alone and this is normal, and ask away, because, you know, our job is to educate you. You're going to make your own decisions and your own choices for your family. Our role is to educate you and empower you so you feel good about what you do decide.
Okay. And you're going to have all the statistics and all the information from all the different facilities.
We do. You know, again, I called it a partnership. We partner with different senior living communities, and by partnership, they are not paying us to be partners. That means that A Place for Mom has done the due diligence. We make sure they're licensed. We check for violations, serious violations. We do a yearly physical visit to the facility, so we know we're recommending good quality facilities for the families. Any facility, we're open to partnerships. You know, we just have to go through the process. But we have a really strong network. We partner with all the reputable, big name senior communities, and we also partner with some smaller independents. So we have a really nice variety.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's great.
So well needed.
No, and families are more than welcome to. They can certainly go outside our scope of our recommendations. Again, they're recommendations and good starting places to visit, and we think they're wonderful in quality, but inevitably they may find, you know, just driving down the road another place to stop, and they may choose that facility, and that's, you know, again, it's their choice. But I guarantee you they've asked really great questions, and they know what to look for because we've done our job in educating.
Patty, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back.
Great, thank you.
Join us for the rest of the show.
When you do something online, make sure you won't regret it. Protect yourself before it happens.
When you post something online, it is there forever. That's a long time. Even if you delete something, it is still there, somewhere.
If you post something embarrassing, it could affect your life and your job. Also, don't trust everyone you meet online.
It could be a 40-year-old saying that they're 15.
Make sure not to share your personal information like your name. That could possibly put you and your family in danger. Remember, once you hit send, there is no going back.
Be safe. A message from Girl Scout Troop 90073, Brunswick, Ohio.
Welcome back to Golden Years. I'm interviewing Patty Kolman from A Place for Mom. And we are having a wonderful, interesting conversation about when do you know mom and dad have gotten to the point that, yes, the red flag is going up and we need to do something,
Right.
a child.
Right, right. You know, being in healthcare for so many years, I'm a real advocate for pre-planning. So if you see some red flags, you notice they're having trouble taking their medication, you know, their pill box is still full, or maybe they're having more insulin reactions than normal. You find that they're not eating properly. They're just too tired or don't feel like cooking for themselves. If you notice some weight loss, if you notice they are having trouble navigating the stairs, maybe they have had a fall. You know, it doesn't have to be a fall every day or every week, but if you just notice
Change. It's a change in their
yeah,
daily
you're going to know.
routine.
You're going to start seeing a change. You know, follow your gut. I know with my own family, I have 4 siblings, there were 5 of us. We sort of knew when there were changes in our own mother, and we were kind of discussing, where do we go from here? That's a great time to call Place for Mom. You know, we can just give you advice. We've worked with families for years. You know, we're not going to get you on the phone and say, okay, you're moving in a month. We've worked with families for years. You know, they started out, didn't really need anything, they just needed some advice. A year or 2 later, they needed a little home health care. And then maybe 4 years later, you know, as their parents continued to decline, they were ready for assisted living. We've now worked with them for 4 years. We've acted as a free consultant for them, and we help them. So now we have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So it can't hurt to call and just ask, you know, for advice or guidance. It's good to have a plan.
Okay, on your website, is
Yes.
that user-friendly? So
It
they
is
can go on and
It
get
is
tips?
user-friendly, yes. You know, a little box will come up saying what what are you looking for, and you can put your name and address in. You know, you can close that box, because if you fill that out, that means someone may call you. So just click and close that box. And then our website is just a plethora of information. I love our website. If you are currently caregiving for someone, whether, you know, we talk about parents, it may be your sibling. We see many people that they're helping their sibling, maybe their aunt, maybe just a dear friend. But if you're a caregiver, we have a terrific caregiver newsletter that you can receive, obviously free of charge. Just have to be internet savvy, because it does come through
okay.
email, but most people today are. So it's just a wonderful support, gives you tips and advice and information. We have something called the Marketplace, where different senior businesses can advertise. You can just look, you know, in your own community. We have a new program on our website called Ask the Expert. Right now, it's limited to elder care attorneys and financial planners, but you can, you know, click on your state, and then if there is one available in your city, you can click on that, and you could actually type in questions and they'll respond. So, or read the ones that are already there. So you can kind of garner some information that way. So we have
I like that.
Alzheimer and dementia care information. We're just really, really out to educate people. So it's just a really neat tool, another tool for your tool belt to help your family.
Good. When you made that comment about closing the box,
Yes.
if you don't want them to
Correct.
call you further, because I picked up one website about assisted living,
Right.
and how they're not rated, but what to look for in the different
Right.
homes. Well, I already got a phone call, and that
Yeah.
just frustrated me.
Right,
I said,
right.
you know, I wanted to be in the background, you know, making sure that
Right.
we made the right decision for my
Right.
mother-in-law. But I will tell you one thing, and I will tell this to the viewers. It took my mother-in-law a good 6 months to have the words come out of her mouth.
Right.
I am happy here.
Aw,
You know, because it's not going to happen in the
No.
first 1,
Right.
2 months. They have to get their feet wet.
They do.
Because it is a big change for them.
Big, it's huge. They're accepting it's another stage of life for them, and as you age, and I'm aging,
No,
you know, I can't do the things sometimes that I did 5 years ago, and you know, it's not fun. You look in the mirror and see a new little wrinkle. It's just, you know, but it is a part of life. So,
It is,
but
and you can't stop it. You can't change it.
But you have to give time. You have to give time. It's an adjustment. If you are moving, you're out making new friends. You know, that's
Exactly.
a whole new ball game, and so it's a huge adjustment for everybody.
and you, the child, or sibling, or you know, whatever you might be in your scenario, you can't be negative and say, you know, just give it time. You know,
Right.
it's going to work out. You have to work with them through
You
it.
do.
You know, you have to
Right.
pamper them and say, okay, well, let's try this or let's
Right.
try that. You know, and like you said, there's different personalities that
Right.
go into these places. They might
Right.
be an active person.
Right.
They might be, I want to stay in the home person, you know, in the room
Correct.
person, which is
Right.
bad, but they have to get their feet wet.
Right. It's a process. And we can really help whoever the caregiver is. Again, it's not always the children, but we can give them hints on, you know, how to navigate that area. We can give them advice, we can give counsel, and I love the fact you brought up the different personalities. You know, again, I have 5 siblings. Fortunately, we all are different, but we do get along. Some families, you know, there's issues. We can sort of act as mini counselors. We can do a phone conference with multiple siblings or people on the phone and kind of get everybody on the same page so they're all hearing the same thing, and maybe kind of help them come to an understanding. We can't always say it's going to be an agreement, but we try to get everybody on the same page. Or maybe they do get along, but they're just in different cities. Again, we can communicate with more than one person on the phone, so everyone is hearing the same information about this big change and the advice we're giving. So we do recognize that, you know, every family is unique and has their unique challenges.
Man,
and
have I learned that.
we do try to work with them the best that we can.
Yeah. I know, because when a person comes in our store, in the front door, you don't know what kind of day they had.
Right.
You don't know what they're dealing with.
Right.
And again, the siblings, you don't know what's going on. I can tell you
Right.
stories.
I bet you can.
But talking about stories, tell me some warm and fuzzy stories.
Right. Well, you know, going back to being, you know, an advocate for pre-planning, I do tell people that there's 2 types of conversations you can have, because nobody ever wants to have the conversation about what, you know, where do we go from here. But you can either have a conversation in the hallway of a hospital or in the hallway of a nursing facility, or you can have a conversation at home and just say, you know, in the event of, what do you think would be a good plan? Just put a plan. You may never use that plan. You know, if your loved one's going in for surgery and they're, you know, over 55, they're heading towards the senior years, hopefully they're going to do great and they're going to be home quickly. But you want to kind of just think about what ifs. You know, what if mom or dad or sister or brother goes, has their surgery, does their skilled rehab, and they're not ready to go home? Now what? Okay, well, now you're in the hallway if you haven't thought about it. You know, you can call a place for mom and say, you know, in the event they're not ready to go home, what are some options? We can arrange a respite stay. So if, you know, their skilled time at the rehab is up, but they just need a couple more weeks to get back on their feet, we can arrange a short-term respite stay at a facility where they can go and get an extra couple weeks, maybe a week or 2 or 3, to get their strength back, because what you don't want is for them to go home and fall or to get sick again.
Yeah, definitely.
So we can do something as simple as that.
And I believe, not to cut you off, but I believe even these assisted livings, they will let you come and do a trial period.
Oh, absolutely. You know, maybe, you know, you're kind of watching out for mom and dad, and now you have to go to your son or daughter's wedding way across the country. You know, we can put mom or dad in for a respite stay at a facility. It's almost like a little vacation, and they can stay there for the time that you're gone until you come back, or maybe the caregiver becomes ill and they need to put their loved ones somewhere while they recuperate. So there's little mini things we can do. It's not always a permanent, you know, stay. So those are things we can counsel, but just getting a game plan in place. If you know, again, if you know that your loved one is having some surgery and you know they're going to have skilled rehab, talk to us about what options are available just in case. You may not need it, but you have a plan. If you're seeing some of those signs that we talked about, their medication issues, their nutrition issues, their fall issues, call us. We can give you some advice. We can give you some options. It doesn't mean you have to make a huge change. What you don't want to do is wait till that crisis happens. They do have a major fall. You do find them unconscious. They do have to go in for sudden surgery. That's when you're making crisis decisions, and they're not made out of long-term thoughtful consideration. They're made out of desperation, and that's what you don't want. So it's not a fun conversation to have, the what ifs, but I'll tell you what, if you do need that what if, you're going to be so happy you had that plan. You know, maybe you're too afraid to take that step and go that far, but just have our phone number available. So if something does go awry and they can't go home,
You're
you
prepared.
can make that call. Yeah, you can make that call for advice.
And with all the changes of life,
Yeah.
somehow it
Yeah.
happens. The child,
Right.
becomes the parents.
We do.
I mean, and we
It's a
have
lot
to
of
be the
pressure.
decision makers.
Right.
You know,
but some of our
comes to
warm
that point.
some of our warm and fuzzy stories, you know, we had an elderly couple, upper 80s. They had one child and he lived out of town, and the mom was the caregiver for the dad. And she, you know, it was winter. She had a fall and injured her wrist and needed surgery. We very quickly had to find a place for her husband while she went to the hospital. So he did have dementia issues. So we put him in for a respite stay at a dementia care. After mom's surgery, the son decided, you know what, I just don't want mom at home anymore, doing the house, taking care of dad. So they agreed that they needed to make the transition. So we ended up finding a facility that had an Alzheimer dementia care unit. It was an assisted living for the dad. It also had a more independent area for the mom, so they could both live together. We helped the son, being from out of town, we helped him navigate all the waters. We found a great place in a very short amount of time, and it was just a wonderful success story.
That is wonderful.
We help many veterans. We work with the VA, and we help veterans find the appropriate housing. You know, many people think, because most assisted livings are self-pay.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
that question. Does insurance cover any
No,
of these
insurance does
places?
not cover assisted living. It does not pay for it. It is self-pay. There are some assisted livings that have what's called a Medicare waiver, but they usually require you to be self-pay for a short amount of time, usually a year, maybe up to 3 years. So that's a great question to ask. And you don't have to remember that. We'll advise you that when we talk to you. But if you only have a certain amount of money and it will last you a certain amount of time, we're going to be very careful about placing you in a place that it does have the Medicaid waiver, so you can just transition right into that form of pay, and then you don't have to move. So that's a question that, you know, we do ask. So we've helped many of the veterans, not only here in Ohio but across the country. People think that, gee, I can't afford it, but after we talk with them, they actually find out they might have some resources to help them pay for their care.
And I know in a lot of seniors, because we hear it, they need that money for the rainy day.
I know.
Well, the rainy day is here.
It is the rainy day.
You have to take care of
Yeah.
yourselves. Don't
Right.
save the money for your kids.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
it's time for you to use that money
Yeah.
and be happy and safe. You know.
And that's why they call it the greatest generation, and my parents were part of that. They want to leave it for their children.
do.
Absolutely.
Oh, they do.
And you know, it's really tough to argue. My mom did the same thing, and you know, but as the child, you know, that money, you've worked hard, and that is for your care, and you know, we need to, you know, knowing you're well cared for is all that we need as a child. You know, that's all we need to know, is that our
Very
parent
good
is
point.
cared for, and we don't want you in harm's way. We don't, you know. I know, Mom or Dad, you don't want to move from your home. We all want to stay in our own home.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to find you, you know, after you've had a bad fall and you end up in the hospital. That's
Exactly. And then it goes downhill from there.
Yeah, we don't want that, because that's not a good ending. That's not. We want you with your family, happy, well cared for, so we can bond more.
Exactly.
The bonding never ends.
And then when you go to visit, when the children go to visit, you could have a good time with
Yeah.
Mom and Dad and
Yeah.
not worry about,
That's
okay,
right.
are you eating?
Right.
Are you bathing?
Yeah.
Okay, what real quick do you want to leave with my viewers?
Well, I would say in this local area, I want to give our local number. It's 216-367-9911. And I would just say, don't be afraid to call for advice. You want to make the decisions in a thoughtful, calm manner. You want to have your loved one cared for. You know, at the end of the day, again, with my experience in healthcare, life is all about the relationships. That's the only thing that matters. It's not your homes or your diamonds or your cars. It's the relationships. And when someone is well cared for and loved and safe, you have time to develop those relationships and work on those relationships and leave this world in a really great place. And that's what we really want.
Awesome
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Patty, so much for joining me on
Thanks for
Golden
having
Years
me.
this month. And thank you for watching Golden Years, and we will see you in October.